Skull Nation, stop right now. U.S. Bank Stadium just erupted with breaking news, and one number is already burning through the locker room. 21 days. A franchise center inches toward his return window. A Pro Bowl pass rusher went down with a shoulder scare that could have ended everything. The coaching staff just got exposed for sabotaging their own quarterback. A cornerback hit the injured reserve for the second time this season, and a timeline just shifted that changes how Minnesota attacks Chicago this Sunday. Each could flip this season on its head, starting now. Insiders dropped hints all weekend, and here's the first payoff. That 21-day window, it's not a rumor. It's the exact practice window the Vikings are about to activate for a four-time Pro Bowler who hasn't snapped the ball in 6 games. If you scold louder than you breathe, hit like and subscribe right now, because the NFC North runs through Minneapolis, and we're about to prove why Green Bay's window is slamming shut. We start with the center situation that has the entire offensive line holding its breath. Stay locked to the very end. There's a double cliffhanger involving a division rival that will make you scream. Closed door. Medical staff. One veteran sitting in silence, waiting for clearance. Minnesota insiders have been whispering for weeks, but Monday morning the whisper became official. The player in question, someone who anchors the entire offensive identity, someone who's supposed to protect the franchise's future, someone whose absence has caused communication breakdowns on national television. The question wasn't if he's talented. The question was WHE and the medical team would finally clear him to return. The name, Ryan Kelly. And here's why this changes everything for the Vikings offense. Ryan Kelly isn't just a center, he's the brain of the offensive line. Last season with Indianapolis, 124 career starts for Pro Bowl selections, and a reputation for pre-snap adjustments that quarterbacks dream about. That's not just experience, that's mastery. The Vikings signed him to a 2-year deal specifically to protect J.J. McCarthy, the young quarterback who needs stability more than he needs anything else. But Kelly went down with his second concussion of the season in Week 4, and the entire line has been scrambling ever since. Now imagine what happens when he returns and McCarthy finally gets the veteran presence he was promised. The math is simple. Kelly back means McCarthy gets better protection calls, cleaner snaps, and fewer mental errors that lead to sacks. But here's the wrinkle that has the coaching staff buzzing. According to head coach Kevin O'Connell on Monday, this is not confirmed yet, but expected. Kelly's 21-day practice window will open soon, barring any setbacks. That's not just a timeline, that's a countdown. Kelly has already missed 5 games and cleared the mandatory 4-game minimum on injured reserve. Once the Vikings open that window, he can practice immediately, and the team has 21 days to activate him to the 53-man roster or shut him down for the season. The front office has been cautious because of Kelly's extensive concussion history, but O'Connell has toned suggested confidence. This man wants Kelly back on the field, and he wants it fast. So here's the context that makes this urgent. In Kelly's absence, the Vikings turned to Michael Juergens, but he got hurt in the same game Kelly went down. Then they moved Blake Brandel from guard to center for the first time in his entire career. Brandel has done his best, but the results speak for themselves. Against Baltimore on Sunday, the offensive line had multiple false starts, botched snap exchanges, and communication failures that led to J.J. McCarthy taking unnecessary hits. Some of those issues trace directly back to not having a veteran center calling out protections and adjusting to defensive fronts. Kelly brings that expertise instantly. He's seen every pre-snap look imaginable over his 9-year career, and McCarthy desperately needs that voice in his ear. Here's another layer that raises the stakes even higher. When Kelly was healthy at the start of the season, Christian Darrisaw was still recovering from a knee injury. When Darrisaw returned, Donovan Jackson was out with a wrist problem. If Kelly can come back before another injury hits, the Vikings could finally field their complete starting offensive line for the first time all season. That means Kelly at center, Darrisaw at left tackle, Jackson at left guard, and the continuity the offense had been missing since September. You want to know why the run game sputtered against Baltimore? Inconsistent line play. You want to know why McCarthy is getting pressured up the middle? No veteran center making the right calls. Do you think Ryan Kelly's return makes the Vikings offensive line a top 10 unit in the NFL right now? Drop your honest ranking in the comments. And if you believe this move gives Minnesota the edge over Chicago this Sunday, smash that LIKE button and let Bears fans KNOW who owns the NFC North. But hold on, because as critical as that center news is, the next story cuts even deeper. While the Vikings are working to get Kelly back, their best defensive player just went down with an injury that could have derailed the entire pass rush, shoulder damage, immediate concern, and a timeline that had the entire building holding its breath. Stay locked. Third quarter, Baltimore driving. One edge rusher crashes toward Lamar Jackson, reaches out, and immediately grabs his shoulder. The entire Viking sideline went silent. Jonathan Greenard, the defensive leader, the sack machine, the guy who changes games with his timing and energy, was walking off the field in visible pain. Minnesota fans watching at home felt their stomachs. DROP. Losing Greenard for any significant time would gut the pass rush, eliminate the defense's most consistent pressure, and force the Vikings to rely on depth pieces who aren't ready for that workload. But here's the relief that came Monday morning. Ian Rappaport reported the shoulder issue is considered minor and could sideline Greenard for only 1 week. That's not a season ender, that's a manageable absence, and the Vikings are treating it like they dodged a bullet. Let's establish what Jonathan Greenard means to this defense. Last season, after a primetime win over Chicago, Greenard joked that a sack with a forced fumble was the best feeling in the world. That clip is old, but the sentiment is eternal. Greenard's energy is infectious, his timing off the edge is elite, and his ability to finish plays in crucial moments defines Minnesota's defensive identity. Through 9 games this season, he leads the team in quarterback pressures and is second in sacks. When he's on the field, opposing offenses have to account for him on every passing down. When he's off the field, the entire structure changes. Defensive coordinator Brian Flores can still dial up creative blitzes, but losing Greenard removes the one-on-one matchup that collapses pockets and forces early throws. Now here's the practical breakdown of what 1 week means. Greenard will likely miss the Week 11 matchup against Chicago, a divisional game where the Bears will try to exploit his absence with quick passes and max protection on deeper routes. Minnesota will counter by rotating more defensive linemen, using collective pressure instead of relying on individual dominance, and mixing in simulated pressures, where linebackers and safeties threaten the edges to keep the offensive line guessing. On early downs, expect disciplined gap control from the defensive line, setting up third and long situations where the Vikings can unleash exotic looks without Greenard. The key is replacing his initial success rate without chasing highlight plays that turn into busted containment and big gains for the offense. But here's the detail that defines the recovery timeline. The priorities govern when Greenard comes back. First, pain tolerance and stability during extended arm and driving movements. A compromised shoulder robs an edge rusher of leverage at the top of his rush arc, and without that leverage, he's just another body on the field. Second, post-contact recovery, because muscle soreness spikes the day after intense hand-fighting and physical battles. If both metrics check out, 1 week of limited practice followed by situational usage on game day is realistic. The Vikings need Greenard to be explosive in December and January, not just available. A short rest combined with smart usage beats rushing him back for marginal gains in November. So here's what Vikings fans need to understand. Greenard's absence for 1 game is survivable if the coaching staff manages the rotation correctly. That means more snaps for guys who can win with speed, more stunts and twists to create free runners, and more safety blitzes to keep quarterbacks from sitting comfortably in the pocket. The defense won't be as dynamic without Greenard, but it won't collapse either. The real test comes if he misses more than 1 week, because that's when depth becomes a liability and opposing offenses start exploiting the weak. Lynx, do you think the Vikings defense can hold Chicago under 20 points without Jonathan Greenard on the field? Drop your score prediction in the comments. And if you believe Greenard is the most underrated pass rusher in the NFC, hit that LIKE button and make sure Packers fans see this. But listen closely, because while the defense deals with Greenard's shoulder, another defensive starter just got shut down for at least 4 more games. A cornerback with a troubling injury history, a roster spot that just opened up, and a veteran returning to fill the void. This one stings differently. Stay locked. Before Week 10, the Vikings made a roster move that signals both caution and disappointment. Cornerback Jeff Okudah, the former 3rd overall pick trying to rebuild his career in Minnesota, was placed on injured reserve due to a concussion. That move guarantees he misses at least 4 more games, and it opens a roster spot that the Vikings immediately filled with veteran Fabian Moreau. For Okudah, This is another chapter in a career defined more by injuries than impact. For the Vikings, it's a reminder that betting on talent with chronic health issues is always a gamble. Let's break down Jeff Okudah's NFL story, because it explains why this move matters but doesn't devastate the depth chart. Okudah entered the league as the third pick in the 2020 draft, a cornerback with elite size at 6'1" and 205 pounds, plus the athleticism that made him a lock for the first round. As a rookie with Detroit, he played 9 games and started 6 before injuries derailed his season. Year 2, 1 game, that's it. One single game before his body broke down again. His 2020 season in Detroit had 15 games, which looked like a breakthrough, but that turned out to be an outlier, not the norm. In 2023 with Atlanta, he managed 13 games. In 2024 with Houston, only 6 games. And now in 2025 with Minnesota, 6 games before hitting injured reserve again. If you're counting, that's 5 seasons and only 1 year where Okudah stayed relatively healthy. The Vikings signed Okudah to a 1-year deal worth just $0.35 million, a proven contract designed to give him another chance without major financial risk. If he played well, Minnesota would have landed a starting caliber cornerback at a discount. If he struggled or got hurt again, the Vikings could move on without cap consequences. Through 6 games, Okudah graded as below average, a predictable result given his inconsistent career. He's shown flashes of the physical tools that made him a top pick, but the consistency and availability just aren't there. And now, with this concussion forcing him to injured reserve, his season might be over depending on how Minnesota's playoff picture develops by week 14, when he's eligible to return. Here's the bigger context that makes this move about more than just Okudah. The Vikings secondary has been shaky all season. Byron Murphy Jr., the big free agent signing, has taken a step back from his Arizona days. Isaiah Rodgers has been solid, but not elite. Together, that duo can be beaten if the pass rush doesn't generate consistent pressure. Behind them, the depth chart now features Fabian Moreau as the 4th cornerback, a veteran who played for Minnesota last season and knows the system. Moreau was on the practice squad earlier this year before getting promoted to the active roster, and he's a reasonable CB for option who might even be better than Okudah. At this stage of their careers, Dwight McLaughlin, the previous CB3, got leapfrogged by Moreau in the hierarchy, which tells you how the coaching staff views the situation. So what does this mean for the rest of the season? If Okudah's health continues to spiral, it's hard to imagine the Vikings bringing him back in 2026. At 26 years old, he's still young enough that other teams will give him chances. But Minnesota isn't going to invest in a player who can't stay on the field. The secondary needs reliability more than it needs upside, and Okudah has proven he can't provide that reliability. Meanwhile, Moreau steps in as a known commodity who can handle spot duty and contribute on special teams without being a liability in coverage. Do you think Jeff Okudah's NFL career is over, or will another team give him a chance next season? Drop your take in the comments. And if you believe the Vikings need to invest a high draft pick in cornerback this offseason, smash that LIKE button and let the front office know we're paying attention. But hold on, because while the defense shuffles its secondary, the offense is dealing with a problem that goes beyond injuries. This one involves the head coach, the play calling, and a young quarterback who's being set up to fail. Internal frustration, public criticism, and a philosophy that's contradicting everything Kevin O'Connell said about developing quarterbacks. This story is explosive. Stay locked. 14 months ago, Kevin O'Connell stood in front of reporters and said something that defined his philosophy. Overall, I don't think enough emphasis is put on the organization's role in developing the position, which means I believe organizations fail young quarterbacks before young quarterbacks fail. Organizations. Those words sounded perfect at the time. The exact mentality a franchise quarterback needs from his head coach. But right now, in November 2025, O'Connell is failing his own test. He's not building J.J. McCarthy, he's destroying him. Let's start with the evidence that's impossible to ignore. Against Baltimore on Sunday, McCarthy threw the ball 42 times, got sacked 3 times, and scrambled multiple times on design pass plays. Meanwhile, the Vikings ran the ball just 13 times combined between Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones. 13 rushes. That's not a game plan, that's malpractice. And here's the kicker. Both running backs averaged over 5.5 yards per carry. The run game was working, and O'Connell abandoned it anyway. Why? because he's asking a 22-year-old quarterback in his fourth career start to carry the offense like he's Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. That's insane. Now let's compare that to the week before, when the Vikings beat the Lions. Minnesota ran the ball 19 times with Mason and Jones, plus 1 carry from Jordan Addison. McCarthy threw just 25 passes. That's a balanced approach that protects a young quarterback, keeps the defense honest, and takes pressure off the offensive line. And guess what? The Vikings won that game. The formula worked, but instead of sticking with what succeeded, O'Connell reverted to a pass-heavy attack that exposed every weakness in McCarthy's game. The result? 2 interceptions, multiple false starts, and a 27-19 loss where the offense looked completely out of sync. Here's the deeper problem that makes this even worse. McCarthy currently leads the entire NFL in air yards per attempt at 9.7 yards. Let that sink in. A rookie quarterback, in his fourth start, is throwing the ball downfield more than any other quarterback in the league. Why? Why would O'Connell ask McCarthy to take those risks instead of building confidence with short passes, screens, and play-action concepts that create easy completions? For comparison, Carson Wentz averaged 7.9 air yards per attempt when he was starting earlier this season, which ranked 28th out of 47 qualifying quarterbacks. Wentz, the veteran, got a conservative game plan. McCarthy, the rookie, is being asked to sling it like he's Matthew Stafford. The Vikings invested heavily in the run game this offseason. They gave Aaron Jones a 2-year, $20 million extension. They traded draft picks to San Francisco for Jordan Mason and gave him a 2-year, $10.5 million deal. That's $30 million committed to running backs, and O'Connell is using them on less than 25% of offensive plays. That's not just bad coaching. That's ignoring the roster construction and putting unnecessary pressure on a young quarterback who's still learning how to process NFL defenses. One drive against Baltimore perfectly illustrated the problem. Mason ripped off a 13-yard run on first down instead of staying on the ground and controlling the clock. The Vikings threw on all 4 plays of the next series and punted. You remember that drive. It ended with Adam Thielen getting called for a block in the back and throwing a tantrum on the sideline. So what does this mean for McCarthy's development? Right now, O'Connell is setting him up to fail. The high volume of deep throws is causing McCarthy's mechanics to break down as games progress. There's a visible drop in footwork and accuracy in the second half, which suggests fatigue and mental overload. A smarter approach would reduce the workload, focus on fundamentals, and build confidence with a run-first identity that lets McCarthy take shots downfield. When defenses cheat up, instead, O'Connell is treating him like a finished product who can carry an offense, and that's objectively false. Meanwhile, on defense, the absence of Jonathan Greenard looms large as the Vikings prepare for Chicago. J.J. McCarthy's self-criticism after the Baltimore loss still echoes through the locker room. He took responsibility for false starts and to interceptions, a mature response that shows leadership. But the real question is whether the coaching staff will adjust to support him or keep asking him to do too much. The next man up mentality on offense mirrors the urgency on offense. Both units need smarter game plans, better execution, and a philosophy that prioritizes winning over individual stats. Do you think Kevin O'Connell is mismanaging J.J. McCarthy? Or is this just growing pains for a rookie quarterback? Drop your honest opinion in the comments. And if you believe the Vikings must commit to the run game against Chicago, hit that LIKE button and make your voice heard. But listen closely, because we're not done yet. The conclusion ties all 5 of these stories together. And there's a double cliffhanger that involves a division rival making moves that could flip the NFC North. You do not want to miss this. Stay locked. 5 stories, 1 storm. The center returns and stabilizes the offensive line. The pass rusher survives a shoulder scare and prepares for a quick comeback. The cornerback hits injured reserve and opens a roster spot for a veteran. The coaching staff gets exposed for sabotaging their own quarterback with bad play calling, and the defensive identity faces a test without its best player. Minnesota doesn't fear chaos. Minnesota is the chaos. This franchise just revealed the truth about its season. We're not coasting. We're not hoping. We're fighting for every inch in a division that's wide open. Let's break down what this really means for the rest of 2025. If Ryan Kelly returns by week 12 and the offensive line finally gets healthy, the Vikings offense transforms overnight. Kelly brings pre-snap communication that Blake Brandel simply can't replicate. He brings veteran leadership that J.J. McCarthy desperately needs. And he brings stability to a unit that's been patchwork all season. Combine that with a potential shift to a run-first identity, and suddenly the offense looks like what it was supposed to be in August. But that only happens if Kevin O'Connell learns from the Baltimore disaster and commits to protecting his young quarterback instead of exposing him. If O'Connell keeps calling 40-plus pass attempts per game, Kelly's return won't matter because McCarthy will be running for his life on broken plays and bad protections on defense. Jonathan Greenard's one-week absence is survivable, but it forces Brian Flores to get creative. Expect more simulated pressures, more safety blitzes, and more collective pressure instead of relying on individual dominance. The Vikings can beat Chicago without Greenard if they control the line of scrimmage on early downs and force the Bears into obvious passing situations. But if Greenard misses multiple weeks, or if the shoulder issue lingers longer than expected, the pass rush becomes a liability instead of a strength. That's the difference between winning 10 games and missing the playoffs entirely. Jeff Okudah's move to injured reserve doesn't change much on the field, because he wasn't playing at a high level anyway, but it's a reminder that the secondary is thin and vulnerable to injuries. If Byron Murphy or Isaiah Rodgers goes down, the Vikings are relying on depth pieces who aren't ready for full-time duty. The front office needs to prioritize cornerback in the draft and free agency this offseason, because the current group isn't good enough to win in January. Now here's what I need from Skull Nation. 1. Smash the LIKE button if you believe Ryan Kelly's return makes the offensive line a top 15 unit in the NFL. TWO, drop a comment with your boldest prediction for the rest of the season. Are we winning the division? Are we making a playoff run? Or are we missing the postseason entirely? 3. Subscribe, because every single subscriber makes Packers fans furious, and we're about to take over the entire NFC North. Let's make this channel the loudest voice in Vikings media. Let's prove that Skull Nation is unmatched. But listen closely, because here's the edge of the cliff. One signature is still unsigned. Ryan Kelly's practice window hasn't officially opened yet, and until it does, there's a chance the medical staff finds something in the concussion protocol that delays his return even further. That decision could come in the next 48 hours. If Kelly clears protocol and starts practicing this week, the Vikings offense gets a massive boost heading into the stretch run. If he doesn't, the offensive line stays unstable, and the margin for error shrinks even more. And here's the external cliffhanger that should make every Vikings fan nervous. The Green Bay Packers just restructured contracts to create salary cap space, and they're targeting defensive help at the trade deadline extension window. If the Packers land another pass rusher or a starting cornerback, the NFC North race gets even tighter. The Vikings are currently tied with Detroit for the division lead, but one injury, one bad game, one roster move by a rival could flip everything. Plus, there's a rumor circulating inside the Vikings facility that a defensive leader called a players on LY meeting after the Baltimore loss. No coaches, no front office, just players. What was said in that room could either unite this team or fracture it heading into the most critical stretch of the season. That story drops in the next video. SKOL Nation, the battle is here. The division is OURS to take. Ryan Kelly's return could stabilize the offense. Jonathan Greenard's return could restore the pass rush. Kevin O'Connell's adjustments could unlock J.J. McCarthy. Or none of it happens, and we spiral into mediocrity. The next 4 weeks decide everything. Hit subscribe, stay locked, and let's make the NFC North bleed purple. We ride together, Skull.